1960s, many factors coalesced to create the breakthroughs in the civil rights that changed the face of our nation. Dr. Martin Luther King's leadership gave a face to the struggle for racial equality that we identify with him to this day. The events and his leadership were the climax of a struggle that dated back over a century, involving many remarkable individuals. Events and figures gradually become the preserve of historians rather than ordinary citizens. Even as celebrating a Black History Month gains in institutional popularity, general knowledge of the culture's greatest figures is on the decrease, including among younger blacks. This is why portrait artist Sylvia Castellanos created the African American Collection.
This is one of those opportunities where the arts plays a very critical role in introducing people to something that's so much more important than just the art, but the history and the culture of our people and our country. And this can only happen because of this artist here, because of her work, because of her dedication. All these years in painting this series, that we are able to access this information and to have this conversation tonight.
I have been fascinated by the human face all my life, by its colors, its emotions, the people behind the faces. I always refer to myself as a portraitist because to me that is something very special. Portraiture at its best means painting someone's essence, catching something of his soul. I sit down before a canvas with the goal of creating people who will seem to be of flesh and blood, people who are warm, people who are alive. To me, the idea of doing something with the great Black historical figures was very interesting. I loved the notion of taking old photographs and somehow transforming these faded images into people who were as much alive as our contemporaries, and then bringing them before a generation that barely knows who they were.
Born in Cuba, Sylvia immigrated with her family to the United States at the age of 9 after the Castro Revolution. In Castellanos' life, the doodles of her early years growing up in Miami gradually developed into something more serious. Always her subject matter was people. When she was asked to paint one of her school administrators and this portrait was hung in the school office, commissions followed. She was only 13. At the age of 30, she moved to Guatemala for 8 years. In this Central American country, she was fascinated by the indigenous population. For the next 18 years, she worked on a collection of portraits, the Mayas of today, at the level of the common man. The collection has been honored with prestigious exhibits. It was shown in Guatemala at the residence of the U.S. ambassador. In Washington, D.C., it was exhibited at the Organization of American States.
Without a doubt, everything I did in the Mayan collection really laid the foundation for what I did now with the African American collection. In both, I was able to create a sort of tapestry of humanity, which is what I love best doing, and show people of all kinds at all different stages of life. My best work is when the subject matter lets me chronicle life in general. That is what I am happiest doing. When a subject matter is broad enough that I can include in it people of all kinds in all kinds of different situations in life, that is truly when I am the happiest. And it was very much the case with the African American collection.
The African American project took a year and a half to complete. The people included were Sylvia's own choice, made after considerable research. She read books, watched documentaries, and looked at hundreds of photographs. After developing a feel for the subject's character and appearance, she assembled elements from multiple photographs to help her convey the image in her mind.
Well, this is my favorite here.
Oh, yes.
This one of Joe Louis. I think that this is probably one of the more underrated paintings, just for painting's sake, not about history or biography of the person. Just as a painting, it just recalls to me more of the turn of century American painting periods of George Bellows and the Hudson River School. This reminds me very much of that style of painting.
There is no way I could have done this without the help of several historical organizations. When painting people from the past and photographs are your only visual source material, you need to search until you have found pictures that really catch the person's appearance and really catch his character. There are people I have never painted just because I have never found the right photographs. For Booker T. Washington, I used the head from one photograph and the body from another. I happened to take pictures of his home during a trip to Tuskegee, and among them I chose for the background the fireplace in his home office. I was really looking for an alternative to placing him at a desk because that's so overdone. In order to use my photograph of the fireplace, though, I first had to do a perspective drawing of it so that I could paint it in at the correct angle and maintain the right scale. I remember a December morning I spent buying fabric samples along Philadelphia's Fabric Row. The Josephine Baker photograph I was using including yards of fabric draped at her feet. Since the picture was black and white, I had pretty much a free hand as far as how I depicted the fabric. Then over Christmas, I draped one piece of cloth after another over my front steps and took pictures of each one. My neighbors must have thought I was crazy, but the final work was a better painting because of this.
The African American collection is very important because Ms. Castellanos has made a selection of so many brilliant people. If you don't know them, you will immediately once you see the portraits, because again, the portraits themselves are so believable that you can't help but feel yourself almost talking to the person once you see them.
Fans, we would like to thank Sylvia Castellanos, who has a display of her art, including Jackie Robinson and a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, here this evening.
Sylvia's work has been featured on television by Univision, the largest Spanish-language network in the United States.
We end tonight's news with our arts and entertainment feature. I am pleased to present to you an area artist. Her name is Sylvia, and she is a portraitist. Sylvia Castellanos' paintings have been exhibited in important international venues. Castellanos refers to...
There are painters who feel there has to be something very distinctive about their style. And I have this image of a painter jumping up and down and waving his arms and saying, hey, look at what I've just done. Isn't this different? Isn't this clever? I take a totally different approach. The challenge I prefer is one that I think is a lot more subtle, and I think it's a lot more difficult. I prefer to try to render my involvement in the painting invisible. In other words, I want someone to come up to a painting and look at it, look at the face, look at the eyes, and just have a sense that he is interacting with another person, then that it's just the two of them. And only later, I want him to remember, hey, there was a painter involved there too. I don't know how often I achieve this, but it will never stop being my goal.